I went to a professional recording studio for the first time recently, and I wanted to share that experience with you just in case you are thinking of going to a professional studio or you're debating, should I do it or should I not? I've been making music for over 10 years, but I've never ever been to a professional recording studio. And so this was a first for me. There were lots of questions I had before I went, lots of things that made me hesitate to even go before I took that leap. And so, just in case you're thinking about it, I wanted to answer some of those questions and just describe my experience with it. So, feel free to comment below if you have any more questions, but these are just the things that I thought are important that you might want to know. So, I'm going to look at my notes of what I wrote down. Okay, some questions I had before I went was one question was, what's the difference between a professional recording studio and a home recording studio? Yes, I've seen pictures, but I was really curious, like, in terms of sound, what is really going to be the difference if I have my own setup at home versus going to theirs with their setup. And if you haven't watched my other video, because I'm pretty sure I described what my home studio setup looks like, I'll put a link to that video in the description box. So the main difference, I would say, is the soundproofing, like the level of soundproofing, which the studio I went to, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit skeptical. I'm like, is it really gonna sound good? Because it's right by a highway, and there were a few studios that were right by highways. And so I was like, is it gonna sound good? But then when I went in, they do such a good job of soundproofing it. I could hear a pen drop in there. Like, I wouldn't even know there was another world outside of that studio because of how good it was soundproof. Of course, they have the soundproof booth. They have all the soundproofing on the walls, all that. So like, that was the thing that I think is probably the most distinct thing between my home studio and a professional studio is their soundproofing is top notch, which does make a difference in terms of the quality of the recording you're gonna get. Because at home, when I'm trying to record, I hear a bunch of noise and like, I don't necessarily have the best space for that. Although if I invest more money into it, I'm sure I could probably like really make it better, but we'll see. It's something I'm still thinking about. I might actually build up my home studio a little more or rearrange it so that it's in a different room or something just so it could be better. But yeah, that was one of the main things. Okay, so another thing that was different between the professional recording studio and a home studio was just the fact that you're in a dedicated space. And I know for me, one thing that affects my sound quality when I'm recording at home is the fact that sometimes I hold back. I don't know if that's just me. Other people might be different, but because I have neighbors, I live in an apartment and I just like feel like, oh, I'm going to be too loud or my neighbors are going to hear me. And so I have to be a little bit quieter when I record. I have to sing softly. And when you're holding back, you can hear that in the music. It doesn't have the same sound quality as when you're just singing full out, letting the emotion flow and just letting your sound be what it is instead of stifling it. So that was another thing, is like you have a dedicated space, which maybe for some of you, if you already have a home studio or if you're thinking about building it, maybe you have a space in your home or your apartment where you feel like it really doesn't matter. Like it's secluded enough. It's kind of dedicated enough that you can make that happen. But for me personally, right now, I don't have that. And so that was one thing I really appreciated about having the professional recording studio. I mean, I remember I had a roommate. She was a singer actually, and she was like a temporary roommate. And I remember she would go to auditions. So I live in LA, and I remember she would sing like so loudly that if I were coming home, like if I were outside of the apartment building, I could hear her. Like that's how loud her voice was. So if you're somebody who just like owns it and does not care, maybe that's not a problem for you. But for me, that aspect, professional recording studio, was better. So let's see what else I wrote. Oh yeah, obviously another difference is that they have all the gear, all the tech and everything is just set up nicely. The computer, they have all the digital audio workplace softwares well, maybe not all, but the place I went to, they had like 10 different ones. So I guess it depends on the engineer and what they like to use. But they had Pro Tools, they had Ableton, they had Logic Pro, they had literally every type of digital audio workplace station, like for mixing and recording and adding instrumentals and vocals. They had it all. So that's another plus, is that they have the tools that are needed to get a professional sound, a professional quality of the recording. Also, just like the EQs and like all the little like buttons and machines. So the studio I went to, you can actually book through them an audio engineer. So a lot of places you can just book studio time, and if you have somebody that you work with, you can bring that person or connect with that person, and they can come with you after you book your studio time. But in this place, they had it set up to where you can book the studio and randomly be assigned to an audio engineer, which is what I did because I don't really know many people. I'm not in that space yet. And so I was like, well, let's take a gamble on it. Let's do it. And so I ended up getting matched with someone. And so that was really nice to just like have someone who knows what they're doing there. Even though I have some experience with that, I do produce my own music as well. I compose, and I've been doing that at home and on my own computer, but it's just nice to have someone who knows how to use all the tools and all the plugins. That's another thing, is like, depending on your setup, maybe you bought plugins, and plugins are just basically different things you can add to the voice or to the instrumentals to make it sound better. And usually you would have to pay. They're free ones, I've heard, but I think the really good ones you have to pay for. But the professional studio has all of that already there, which is super nice. So yeah, they just have everything you would need. And then I think I was going to say something else, which is that the audio engineer I worked with, he even told me that there are places that have even better setups. Like, he showed me a picture. He's like, yeah, this is just one type of setup. And then he showed me like an advanced studio setup. And I was like, oh my goodness, next level. Like, I cannot wait to get to that level of like a profession, like truly not professional, but like advanced studio setup with the instruments already in there, like the raw instruments and just like the advanced EQ board or or whatever it's called. I'm still learning, okay? So, yeah, that's what they had there. That's the main difference. So, another question I had before going into a professional recording studio is, how much time would you actually need? And I went back and forth because a lot of places, they'll have minimum time requirements, and each one will be different. So one studio I looked at, they said you can only do a 2 hour minimum. Then another studio I looked at, they said you can only do a 4 hour minimum. And so I remember I actually was looking into studios a while back, guys, like probably at least 2 years ago, which is crazy that like I looked into it and never did it. But it's because I had so many questions that I just was like, oh, just on the fence, not knowing what to do. But at that time when I looked into it, there were a lot of different studios offering like you can do a 4 hour minimum, but I felt like I don't really know what the studio is like. Like, can I just go in and see what it looks like and get a feel for it? Like, how do I know if I'm even gonna like it? And then if you commit to however much time, that's an increase in cost, obviously. And like, when you haven't done that before, cost might feel like an issue. Like, oh my gosh, like I got to pay for 4 hours of studio time, and I have to pay for the audio engineer's time too. Like, that could add up. But honestly, now looking back, it's like I wish I had done it sooner. So if you're thinking about it, you're on the fence, I would say just save up the money. Look, do your research, do some light research. Don't take forever just looking through different places and never booking it, because after having gone in there, it's like this huge kind of like like sigh, like relief, this weight off my shoulders, because like, okay, now I know what it's like. The process was pretty cool to be a part of and experience. And so, yeah, like I could understand money could be an issue, but I would say don't limit yourself, especially in the beginning. You're going to need the most time, probably, depending too on if you are someone who has been recording at home for a long time. So I am someone who has been learning and trying different things, but I wouldn't say actually full on recording vocals start to finish and releasing them out there. Like I said before, I've never put my music out there. That's why I'm working on this EP. So if you're used to that process, maybe there are some skills that would transfer into a professional recording studio. But if you haven't been doing that, yeah, I would give yourself 4 hours. Honestly, that's the truth. 4 hours. I did 3, and I could tell that towards the end there was a little bit of a rush. Not too much. 3 hours was just about enough, honestly, but at the same time, 4 hours would have felt like, oh, this is like plenty of time. And you want to feel like it's plenty of time rather than being rushed, which I know it's like, oh, like I don't want to waste money, like if I don't need that extra time at the end, but you just want to be able to be comfortable too, because I think that also plays a part into how your vocals are going to sound. If you're relaxed, you're comfortable, and not as stressed out. And then how much time? Okay, so how much time do you need? Oh, yeah. This is what else I didn't realize is you're going to have to learn just how to be in a professional recording studio. You know, they had the setup to where you could either stand up to record or sit down to record. So I chose to stand up to do everything just because I felt like that's probably better for vocals than sitting down. But honestly, I should have sat down at some point. By the end, my feet hurt so bad, and I didn't want to really take breaks because I wanted to make the most of my recording time. But ooh, yeah, my feet hurt. And also just the fact that like I was drinking a lot of water because I wanted my throat to be, moisturized and moisturized, lubricated and everything. But at some point then I had to pee too because I was drinking a lot of water. And I think also I was just nervous in general. So it's better to have enough time to plan for all of those kind of things. And also, my voice was shaky, especially at the beginning. Like a good part of the first however long of the session, my voice was shaky. I was nervous. Like I've never shared my music before. I've never had anyone else besides like just like 2 people that I'm very close to. Had never had anyone else listen to my music. So for some reason there's that part of me that was like, "Oh my goodness, what are they going to think? Are they going to think it's bad? Like, ooh, like why is this person even making music? Like how dare they make me listen to this?" I don't know. I just had all these thoughts in my head and all this nervousness, which was like not even really warranted after I really got there and got into it. And the engineer I worked with was super nice, very supportive. I let him know like I'm open to learning. I want to know how things work. So he gave me feedback. He gave me strategies. He gave me tips. He explained everything. He was very patient in that regard. And so that is something I'm very happy about in terms of that experience. And so that all of that takes time. So give yourself time. And so the next question is, what is something I didn't realize going in that I think anyone else should know before you go into a professional session? I would say the level of preparedness that you need to have going into a professional recording studio session is not to be slept on. And the reason why I say that is because I, to some extent, was prepared. I didn't just go in willy-nilly because you have to think about it. I was going in like, I want to save my money. I want to make the most of the session. I want to lay as many tracks down as possible. Like I even had the full EP like ready, like, because I was thinking 3 hours, that's kind of a long time. And I was like, I could probably do all of the songs. Like it's just singing the song, right? It's a 2 to 3 minute song, 3 hours. Like, but the thing is, you're going to be recording the melody. You're going to be recording harmonies, multiple harmonies. You're probably going to stack vocals, which means recording more of the same line over and over so that it can make the track feel full. And so all of that takes time. And the thing is, too, for the particular song I did, so I only ended up getting to one song. I did not get to all 4 songs that I'm planning to put on this EP that I'll be releasing. I only got to one. And even though I was prepared to an extent, like I had all the files ready, I had my like a rough outline of the vocals. I even had a rough recording of the harmonies. But the thing is, like, rough copies aren't good enough, if I'm being honest, if you want to make the most of your time. I think, too, there is a level of, like, you can get there and interact with the audio engineer and, get feedback and change things. That's different. But you really have to have those harmonies memorized, because what happened was I got in there, I was nervous, I was like, everything was new, and then I'm like trying to remember the harmony and I just can't quite remember it. So then I end up doing more freestyling than I had originally planned on. And when you do that, that takes longer in a way, because you might not get the exact like sound that you want, that crisp sound. You might have to play around to kind of find the harmonies. And so all of that and that takes time too. I think that's what took a good amount of time. All of that can be accounted for by being prepared, really. Not all, some of it can be accounted for by being prepared. Stuff happens, it is what it is. But yeah, the level of preparedness in terms of the harmonies, and then there is memorizing the different parts. I had my lyrics memorized. That wasn't a problem for me, but they even have a stand in there so that you can put your lyrics up there just in case you forget them, which I'm back and forth. I think for some of the songs on my EP, I probably will have the lyrics printed out and put up there, because I've even been adjusting the lyrics to like the last second too, just because I have better ones and I'm like, ooh, I could say it like this and like that. But there was one song which the lyrics were for sure done. And so that was the song I chose to start with. And so thankfully I had the lyrics memorized. I can only imagine how much more time that would take if I didn't have the lyrics memorized. Then the other thing is, depending on your singing skills, which I'm not necessarily like the best singer, but I'm an okay singer. I would say what I struggled with was actually being able to do long lines, like do like a full line and a full course, or full parts of the song in one take, which means when you do a little chunk of the song, which a lot of people record like that. Even my audio engineer told me, like, it's not abnormal to do it that way. But the thing about that too is, like, you have to do so many more little takes. There's a lot more stopping and starting. And so if you are prepared vocally, that also helps out. I wouldn't say it's the end of the world. Like, I knew like I wouldn't be the best vocally going in there. And also for some reason that morning I wasn't feeling well, of course. Maybe it was the nerves, who knows. So that affected my voice. So I just went in with the attitude of like, I'm just gonna get this done. It doesn't have to be at its best. Like, this is a learning experience. And so yeah, I think like just being prepared with the vocals will, like, having warmed up. I did warm up my voice, thank goodness. I did that ahead of time. I did drink water. And so, like, all of that was good. But just, if you want to make the most of any session, just prepare. And so even like now, just going in and seeing what it's like, I have a better idea of how to prepare. I also have a better idea of when I need to stand and when I need to sit, and how to make the most of my energy, which I think is a huge thing too. And I also know that I will be less nervous next time than I was this time, which will help a lot in terms of my breathing. My breath control and support wasn't the best because of the nerves, and also the sound quality of my voice wasn't the best because of the nerves. And so when you have to redo things, that's also takes time. But just being prepared in general, I think, is a good thing. And then, ooh, okay. What do I think is the benefit of going to a professional recording studio? I've touched on it a little bit, but what I will say is getting that real time feedback is very helpful. So just having someone else there. Whereas if you're at home, maybe other people, depending on your setup at home, again, this I'm talking to you if you have probably not as good of a setup, like very basic standard home recording setup, right? Like you haven't gotten to that level yet where you've really invested in tech and gear and all the soundproof and everything. Maybe you have a little bit like I do. You have the mic, you have the sound panels, you have, this, maybe the audio interface, whatever. But you just haven't invested in really making it a studio. So I'm talking to that person, and because I think if you have done that, maybe you have been as willing to collaborate with other people. Maybe not. I really don't know. So maybe you've brought other people to your home studio. For me, it's not really set up right now to where I can invite other people to come to my home studio and help me out. And it's not that advanced anyway. So I wouldn't want to invite people over. It's just set up for me to do my own recording. So that being said, I would say just having someone else there to be like, hey, on this part, the pitch was a little bit off. And I'm like, okay, cool. I need to redo that part. Whereas if it's just me, I might hear it, but it's nice to know like someone else thinks something, or there would be certain parts of like my arrangement or composition of the instrumentals where he's like, hey, like this part kind of has this kind of sound or feel that sounds off a little bit, which I know like I have a different kind of style when I arrange. And so it's interesting and nice to hear from somebody else's perspective who's just listening and consuming my music. Like, what do they hear? Because I might hear something and I think it's, the angels singing or whatever, which I don't think that. But, I might think, oh, this sounds great. And to them, it's like, it doesn't quite sound right. So that helps, for me to have an idea too of the things that I need to change and where I need to grow. He'll give me his feedback on, oh, I think, your arrangement and doing the harmonies here and adding these here actually takes away from the song. And maybe if you pulled back there, I could hear the song a little bit better. And I'm like, oh, cool. Thank you. Like, I appreciate you sharing that because it helps me grow and helps me also understand what other people hear, because you have to remember and keep in mind, I've been doing everything in a vacuum. So I actually have no idea what other people hear or see. And then it's also not just the criticism, but it's nice to get positive feedback and encouragement as well. And to hear someone, say like they like, your music and they like your style and they can appreciate what you're trying to do and your form of creative expression. And that was nice for me to just get out of my own shell and get out of my own way and just like be able to really hear someone when they say those things. So that part, the feedback part of it, I think is so important to growth, because I already now kind of have in my mind different things I could change or do better next time. And so for growth purposes, I think to grow faster, it's nice to collaborate. And that's something I've been missing. So if you're someone who's just doing everything alone, you don't have the setup, and you don't have someone necessarily that you're willing to say, hey, can you listen to this and give me feedback? Or even if you have friends that you share your music with, sometimes it's nice to get someone else who's in the industry to hear it and give you feedback. So that part is definitely really nice. And also understanding your own creative style and developing your own creative style. So I would say, like, I know my style of singing, but then when you get in the studio, it's so different when you have the headphones, hearing yourself, feeling yourself, and how you feel in there, and kind of getting your own type of comfort level with recording and your own style in that regard. And also hearing, because the engineer did give me a little glimpse into the mixing process, like light mixing and all of that, because, you know, they can't do all of that in that session unless you dedicate a certain period of time to it. But just, I get so distracted easily, forgive me. But yeah, just yeah, developing your creative style. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, what advice would I give to anyone after having this experience? I would say any like last minute takeaways for me are, it is worth it. It's definitely worth it just to go get out of your comfort zone, see how it's going to be. Not to have so many high expectations right away if it's your first time doing something like this, because I think I had all these ideas in my head of how it should be and how I have to make sure I get everything done in that short amount of time, and how I have to make sure like it sounds good enough to be put out there right away in one day. And that just added a little bit of pressure that I don't think I needed to add on myself. It's not good for recording, but it's also just like you don't need that. So my advice would be to just like go for it, for the process of learning. You're going to learn something. You might have different takeaways than I have, and if you do, please share that in the comments below, because I want to learn and I always want to keep growing. So like go into it with that mentality. After having gone through this the first time, I just feel so much more at ease and relaxed that the next time I have a better idea of what to do and what to prepare and how it's going to work, and it's not all going to get done at one time. The other takeaway is that you're not going to get the professional sound you want at the end of the session, which for me, that was the whole thing of a professional recording studio, right? Is you think you go in and you will get a radio ready song or a radio sounding song. You think you're going to get Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music ready song, and not necessarily, because there's so many different parts of the production process. After you record, then it's the mixing process, which that takes time. Then the mastering process, which that could take some time too. So all of these little steps are needed to get to the end result. And so even just like listening to, I got a copy of the master song and how it sounded like. Even just listening to that, what was interesting to me is the recording I had at home, because I did do it at home beforehand and try to do all those things, was not so much different from the studio, the professional studio. The professional studio recording was better, undeniably so. It was just the raw recording, just because of the fact that I think I was able to sing out more. There was less background noise I had to worry about. Everything was set up well. But overall, when it comes to just like the raw sound and files, it wasn't that much different. I'm going to be honest with you, which is interesting. So my next thing that I'm going to be taking a look at, and probably will record myself and let you guys know, is if I'm able to really truly set up my home studio well enough and have the sound, the raw sound be, when I say raw sound, just the sound without any effects, without anything, if I can just have that be good enough, then I may not need to pay for studio time so much as I would need to pay for the editing, mixing, and mastering, because that takes time and that takes a certain skill level. And I actually do a little bit of that as well. I do mix, which is why also probably like the mixed track that I had done was not too far from what what I had gotten from the studio, except for it did sound a little bit better. So, yeah, I'm excited to see where this journey takes me. I probably will do more professional studio recording as well, because I think it's just nice to not have to worry about so many things and to not have to wear a million hats and try to do everything by myself. I think it's nice to have someone do all of that. So, for the sake of being able to sing my songs and get my music out there, I will probably do that. But in the meantime, I think there's something to be said about working on this home studio and getting it built up a little bit, because I do have a lot more music after my EP that I want to put out there, because I have a lot of songs I've recorded and haven't shared. And so for sure, I want to release those too. Studio time does add up, could be a worthwhile investment, but what if I could do some at home and some in the studio? Who knows? So that's kind of where I'm at right now within my recording process. If you got to the end of this video, oh my goodness, thank you. I appreciate you for listening to me and for sharing this experience with me. And I hope you got something from it. If you did, please subscribe. I'm going to be sharing this process of making an EP until I release my music. Everything you're going to see, the whole thing of, my whole journey. And I hope that it's encouraging you, inspiring you. And I want to hear about what you have going on, what you're working on. So please comment below, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.